Hello everyone and welcome to my oil painting class, and today we are painting the rooftops of Istanbul. We're overlooking most beautiful domes of the Istanbul University, and we're on top of the hill and we're looking down. There are a couple of mosques there. We've got some lovely park, and then we can see a little bit of the Bosphorus on the eastern side of Istanbul. We've got the sun is rising, so we've got an early morning. Had to get up really early before them. Prayers were shouted out. So the atmosphere got loads of calmness, a beautiful range of blues and pinks. So I picked up a grey background today to complement those cool colors. And on my palette, I've got a minimal color choices today. I've got cerulean and ultramarine for the cool colors, and I have some yellow and magenta and violet for the warm colors, a bit of white and tiny bit of black as well. So the plan is just to get that atmosphere of the morning, to get that lovely warmth, perhaps even use a little bit more orange and kind of some of those lovely extra warmth just to bring some extra heat perhaps from the early sunrise and reflections which will come on the rooftops. So I'm going to use some terps to start sketching, and I want to go perhaps with a little bit of ultramarine, diluted ultramarine. Just going to check how it will look on the picture. Okay, so if there will be a strong blue presence, if it will be smudging with our colors later, it has that connection. Right, so first of all, now on my photograph, the main dome here, the key kind of compositional element, is a little bit squashed towards the right, and we can't quite see the top of it, little spike. So I think I'm going to move it a little bit lower and a little bit more towards the center of the painting. So I'm going to plan that to fit in. But I'm going to start with this diagonal of the wall. There is actually quite higher up park, lovely square where we are. And then there is a lovely dip where the university cafes are and some exhibitions rooms for the students. So there is that dip in and then the straight wall up. So that's what that line is for. So I'm looking, if it's approximately, if it would have been a straight line, probably would have been in the middle. But because it's diagonal, it just takes us, so this is my middle, but we want something diagonally drawn. So if you put an approximate line and perhaps then compare, put your brush against the line, okay, maybe a little bit shallower. There, maybe just a little bit shallower. Okay. And if I plan the dome size, then I can decide, can I actually drop this line down? Because what's behind that wall is more exciting. So perhaps I were to put this line tiny bit lower. We'll check the size of the dome and then make my final decision. Okay. So the dome sits on a straight line. So if I'll put a straightish line somewhere here and maybe give it a good centimeter or maybe a little bit more away from the border, and just look at the kind of shape of it. Maybe it's a little bit too big. I think it might be a bit too big. It's a good kind of circle, but I think maybe that's going to be now a bit too small as I moved it and I'm shrinking it in size. Let's have a look. That's going to be too small. Okay. How much space is it taking? So this is my width of the picture. This is halfway through. No, I think we're about right. Okay. So what I'm going to plan next, before I do any other details, I do want to check, is that big enough? Do I need to, because I haven't got much space for the sky here, but I have got quite a lot there. So maybe my original line was a little bit better, but I still want to see what I'm going to fit. So there is a little opening in the wall. It's almost like a cutout section. I think it is a courtyard. So there is a row of domes going down. There is a courtyard, and then these domes coming back there. So I think that is the space to see what kind of to look back and see there is a beautiful mosque behind us. So let's see where it's going to be opening up. Maybe somewhere here. Just looking at the size of the dome. Okay. And that will give me an opportunity to see a little extra what's at the back. Okay. Little higher dome. Okay. And if I plan my other domes, we've got loads of them there. We can see at the back, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe more. But if we plan them in a row, so if I start from the base of my larger dome, I can almost put like a line for them. So then I know they will be all somewhere there. I think that tells me that perhaps my wall, or maybe perhaps just my wall is okay. Okay, I think maybe just my dome could be raised. Okay. So I want you to move things about and find the places. Find that connection. I want to see how much of the smaller domes we'll be able to see. I don't want them to be hidden. I want us to kind of plan that area. Okay. So the angle of the domes might be a little bit steeper than the angle of our wall. Okay, so maybe a little bit steeper. Maybe I will still drop my wall a tiny bit lower. Mhm. And what we have, so if we ignore the front row of domes, the first row, I've got one, I think that's elongated roof, but it looks got a curvature to it, almost looks like a dome. And then you've got two ones. So if we ignore those ones at the front, we look at the back ones. They kind of divided in between each dome. There is a lovely chimney, and it's actually some light coming through that. It's not a chimney, it just looks like a little tower. Um, um, so that's actual light and ventilation. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to use that kind of the little towers as a rough guidance to divide my space for the backdrop of the domes, perhaps into four sections. Okay, maybe a little bit more equal. Okay. So this is the bottom of my domes. And very sketchy, I'd like to proceed a little bit further just to have an approximate view of what's happening, how the domes sit at the back. So the line we draw on the diagonal for the domes is the tops where the domes just touch in the top. So in a way, you can put almost like a middle, so then you know the symmetry of them is approximately going to be there. So they're not going to get out of symmetry. And if I just put some roundish tops, okay, just gives me that connection. Now, ideally, if we were to do kind of look for perspective, because they are stepping down, but they are equally away from us. So they will be of the same size. So I just need to double check that I'm actually drawing them. And they are shallow semicircles. Yeah, so we haven't got that full circle for them. And in a way, we can put bottoms for them. We're not going to see them, but sometimes it's easier to see the shape. Okay. That's when we can decide, can we be a little more creative? Can we open up the wall a little more? I think I might consider making this opening slightly wider. I hope the famous Turkish architect Sinan from the 14th, 15th century, I think 14th century, will forgive me for that. Okay, and there is a little step. So these are going to be the most complex things we're doing. The rest will be quite simple. We're going to divide this opening approximately into half, maybe a little bit shorter or a little bit longer, so it just will be of a variety. So that space and that space, just see if you can vary the distance deliberately again for a good way to appreciate shapes. We don't want them to be equal. Okay, so I have a little kind of base for part of the building behind the wall. And I can come up with a dome-like roof. And it just goes away somewhere there, parallel perhaps to my wall. So it's something a little bit more surrounding here. Might even put little guidance for its lead. It's not tiles, lead structure. And then it just goes parallel with our wall. It finishes somewhere, but we can decide that later. Maybe a bit further. Okay, and now what I'm interested here is where my next dome starts next to it. Okay, so there is a step, so that's probably where that dome is going to be. And this dome is going to be bigger than the ones at the back. So slightly bigger. Okay, actually it doesn't start as far, it starts much closer. Okay. And I think I dropped mine quite low. So perhaps I'll bring it a little bit higher. And perhaps if I bring these domes tiny bit lower, then they do look, they are close together rather than there is a gap between them. So that's what I wanted to see before I make my final kind of suggestion, kind of movements within the painting. So I'm just dropping these ones a little bit lower. So then once we've got that structure, we can move shapes a bit lower, a bit higher, a little bit left, a bit more right, because we worked out an overall structure. And that one could go a little bit long. Okay. There's another dome coming up, but I can just do a hint for it. It's at the back. Somewhere there. Might just even color it in. There is a step for it. Maybe it will be a bit lower. So that each one of the dome is like a step. Lower step, lower step, lower step, lower step, lower. Okay, so next one's gonna start somewhere here and only see part of it. Right, if I'll get a darker color. Some of them. Right, any middle is here, so let's find its edge. The middles I find are important, the little pointy tops and give us that structure immediately. We've got that connection. Maybe even if I were to draw this one, where that's going to be. And I can decide again, do I drop this wall tiny bit more so I can see the peak? Okay, and by the time I've done continuation of my line, I don't think it will affect it too much. Okay. So now I can relax and enjoy the rest of the details, which will be quite minimal, really. The little towers in between the domes, I'll just keep them as my strokes. Just find the tops. Wow, how tall they're going to be. And again, they probably will have a very similar parallel line. We were working for the domes, bases, or the tops, the same. So then it's easier to control. Okay, the height. Sometimes if the towers meant to be the same, but they are jumping about, the kind of the structure of shapes is getting lost. So if we just bear that line in mind from time to time, if we need to check with it, does it give us that similar height? This one actually doesn't have anything tall. This one again, mainly my middles, but if there is something on the towers, that's fine as well. All right. And then let's come back to the main dome, perhaps tiny little bit of elements of how it's kind of that lovely blue connects to the beautiful stone color and the sub corners of the roof. Yeah, how they kind of get in inserted into the corners of the building, so they do look very much floating. I'm putting a little bit of structure where the wall will meet with the other stone, but actually we can't see it as much. Okay. We want to do the rows. Now we're so close to the dome, they haven't got much of ovals. I'm quite happy to put just lines, so in perspective we can't see as much. But what we can see is how our dome is divided almost into little slices. Again, this is more of a practice. You don't have to do it perfectly. This is more just to give us an idea of directions. Okay, and I'm going to decide on approximately how big my point of the dome is going to be. So if I were to put some clouds or any colors, it still gives me an opportunity to put it across. Okay, and then tiny bit of work for the background. If I were to put the line for the water, where would it go? Ideally, I want it to be a tiny bit higher from my dome, so I'm not going to get lost with the lines, and also it will give it a busy town down the hill. So can we have like a little clearance of calmer color after? Okay, maybe if I go maybe just a little bit higher than my lowest tower, so then it doesn't clash. We don't like lines clashing, even if it is like that on a photograph. I tend to spot it and avoid it. Okay, maybe this one will just be just above it or just below it. Okay, and then I'm going to draw a little silhouette of the east side of Istanbul and the rest of the colors and part of town. I think we'll draw with the colors. We paint with the colors. Probably something still behind our dome. Going there. Okay. So then what we have for the front left, again, we can decide, do we want any more of the opening left here? Do we want to have anything else? Just a little bit, if it's too much of the plain area here, I think nothing's gonna be spoiled here by me just giving a little more space for the shapes. Okay, that's on there. So similar steps in height, and similar height in these domes. I just drop this one tiny bit still. So that's my artistic license for that. Still works all fine. And then finally, I will put the row of umbrellas, or it might be part of the wall. It could be any kind of diagonal development here in the bottom right corner. Diagonal might be a little bit steeper. Okay, maybe something a little steeper. Okay. I'm just going to double check my lines on the wall. Sorry, I've adjusted diagonal here, but I haven't adjusted this diagonal. I think that's what it is. So this opens up and this shortens. So then these two lines eventually will meet somewhere. And this line will meet, two lines will meet them somewhere else as well, in a vanishing point off the screen. Okay, that's better. We can work on textures of the wall. You can see the wall below the larger dome got little sub steps. Again, just to make sort of a straight, perfect line, to give it a little bit more of a character. I think I might just drop it a little. Yeah, and then it goes up again. Maybe just changing old wall, new wall, maybe how the roof sits in there. Doesn't affect our painting here anyway. And this is going to be that larger roof here anyway. But at least that length got gentle variety to it as well. Okay. Checking the shapes. And we can do all sorts of textures and things when we start painting, and perhaps even play with the lights. These are umbrellas. Um, I'm quite happy to keep them plain, or even if we'd have just had them as a just element of two diagonals of a pattern of light here, going across. That's fine as well. Might struggle to see them as umbrellas, only because I've been there and I know what they are. They make sense to me. Okay, but occasionally there are some windows and occasionally there are some gates. So I might introduce a couple of smaller windows and perhaps an idea of gates, which probably will be lost in my texture, in my color, but I think if we were to use this space of the quite an empty area of this wall, I think just a little hint of a little bit of light and darkness will be really good. Lovely. Right, now let's have a look at our colors. I'm going to use now some lovely warm colors for the sky. I'm planning to perhaps range the colors, let's say stronger, warmer colors in one corner, because I'm going to have loads of strong blues from the domes. That will be a good contrast. And perhaps a little bit softer pinks going out, because there might be some more purples and that kind of that variety. So it might be united there, but we might have a nice contrast there as well. Okay. I'm also thinking of putting more pinks and warm kind of oranges and some of them stonework, and perhaps here on the umbrellas and some of the stonework on the corners here, again just to offset them with the domes. Let's start with the sky and let's see where it takes us. So I'm going to get some fresh white, got a little bit of oil on my brush just to soften the paint, but don't need to make the paint runny, so nice and just smooth. Okay, I'm gonna go for, let me start with some direct magenta or ruby, whichever you might have, or rose madder. I know different people might have a slightly different colors. And I just want to put it against the dome to test it. So we'll bring more stronger colors maybe towards the horizon and on the right hand side. Okay. And we can vary it, making it slightly lighter, slightly darker. The reason I'm starting with magenta here, the pinks, without mixing it with yellow, because once we mix it with yellow, the color is not going to come out as fresh. So we can always clean our brush and improve the freshness of the pink if we wanted the pink. But it is easier to go in the environment without yellow present first. Okay, maybe somewhere there. So just a plain pink first, because we can blend it with other colors and we can get lighter colors as well. Okay, so I'm just using a variety of strokes, so if it will start reflecting in the shimmering light, that will be fantastic. Hugging the little pointy top of the dome just leaves the little bit of color, mainly the background color really for me, and you can shape it up, but don't worry if it didn't come out well, we can always paint it over. Okay, and I'm also thinking of putting perhaps a little more of that fresher pink, so it's ready to be blended with other colors. Okay, I'm not sure if that pink is the dark enough pink. If it's will remain exactly as it is. In the volume, we'll have a look. But this is our starting point. Right, next, I'm going to start adding some yellow to our pink. That makes the colors quite strong and also darker, but I will use some white to tone it down. And I might consider making the pink a little bit more darker as well. Right, just want to place it a little more together and see how that will work. Okay, it is quite dark. Let's have a bit more white. On the photograph, we have got a lot of white, well, light in the sky, and it is quite plain. I would like to have a bit more variety. I don't want all the darkness just staying at the bottom, otherwise the sky just looks less exciting and less supportive. So bringing some darkness will be good, or bringing that little range of darkness to the sky. Okay, I can see now the range of color. There's no range of darkness yet. Okay, that orangey pink is there. And perhaps if I bring more of it at the base here, at the horizon. Now, my mountain, well, my hill of the distant side of Istanbul looks a bit too symmetrical, low pyramid. Can I do something about it? Can I make it less symmetrical? Can I make it one end a little bit more shallower? The peak is a little bit going towards one side. Can I break that evenness? Yeah, can I just make a little deliberate, even if they're not the same again on the photo? Maybe not quite perfect to what I've done, but perhaps when I'll start painting the land, I'll tweak it. But I think we're getting there with that variety. Okay, I quite like this orangey, peachy color. I think it might come in further somewhere here. And I think the rest of the space, I'm going to add some lighter tones, some more whites. So I'm doing scruffy strokes, preparing perhaps to some clouds formations. So I'm going to wipe my brush and get some fresh white. Then to mix it on my palette, so then the its texture is a bit more even. Doesn't have a chunky end and diluted with oil and runny paint as well. It also evens up any color I might have had in the bristles. Gives me a little bit more flatter color to work with. So let's just fill that one in and then see how it blends. I want to see the big shapes first. Okay. If your colors already start mixing, just go with that. That's quite exciting. I think I might need a little bit of white close to the dough, maybe just to show some of the tops of the clouds, or just a little bit of hint of them, perhaps. And I'll just gently blend some of the borders of my white. Quite like some borders of sharpness. For example, here, the tops here. I'm not sure about this lower part, so it might just be a bit more softer with the strokes. So have a little play. Just bring the orange, just kind of smudge into that, or partially smudge into part of the border. Okay, it's a bit of lost and found. Okay, my shape of the pink here is a little bit weird. So can I go over it partially and merge that pink? That's in a way, that's what I wanted. I just wanted pink present. So then I can just merge it. It's looking quite exciting sky now. And as usual, we can always look into that a bit more as the shapes below develop. Might put a couple of more whiter strokes, just a little more solid. After I've done the smudging, sometimes the color becomes weaker and less volume, showing kind of that the tone is changing, the volume of the paint is changing. I think that's okay. Cloud shapes. So much passing. My corner here next to the dome and the sky looks flat pink. Can I bring tiny bit of my orange just as a little stroke, and it just breaks it enough to have a little variety. So it's not all too flat when the rest is lovely and playful. I think that's looking good. Maybe I'll bring that horizon a little lower, perhaps. You can always raise it up if needed. Okay, just having a picture as it is already given us that morning light, that rise. Sorry, I have put the clouds, and I think just looks much more vibrant and a bit more playful than just a plain sky. And I also want to put some of this color on our buildings, but it will have to be darker versions. We can put some lighter tones maybe later on, but overall, if we were to squint our eyes, we see the whole picture as it is now. Lighter sky, everything else a bit darker. Okay. So let's keep it that way for the moment. So let's bring our pink slightly darker. Can still have some white to give the color some body, so you're not going to run out of that pink too quickly. So I'm going to keep fresher pink, my magenta here. Rose madder, sorry, I've got rose madder. And I'm going to mix more of that lovely orangey color so I can dip into both as I'm going. Okay, so I need more yellow and make sure it is dark enough in comparison to our sky. Okay. We'll put them strategically. We can soften their warmth with some cooler colors after. Right, so I'm going to start with my orangey, peachy color. Let's put it a little more here under our dome. I'm going to paint it not neatly, but almost like placing the color and then waiting to be back for it later on. Yeah, might add a little bit more light, I might add a little bit more violet, but it's almost like, right, we've got some of this color here. Okay, can I put a dab of pink to it? Perhaps. Okay. That actual wall is finishing a little further, so I might just establish the wall. Okay, it might be a little bit too orangey in color, but let's keep it there for the moment. We can see the width of the wall, which is again probably facing more open to face the sun light. And I'm going to exaggerate the step here by putting a little dab here as well. So suddenly we've got the width for the wall. Okay, I might put a little bit more pink for this wall. Again, there's a little hint. And perhaps as it will be going lower, I might change it to more violet in color. I'll have a dab of violet with my pink, but I will also need to have some more white, otherwise my violet will be very dark. Okay. I'm sure I actually paint to my wall. So on my picture, it does look different, but it's not a huge difference in color. So that's will connect it to the warm colors, but it's also connected to the cool colors and some violets, later on to some blues. Okay. And another little step below. They're getting tiny bit darker as they going further away from exposed light. There's a courtyard below. So there are more shadows. Might use the same color, that violety, pink, violet, and our warm colors. Might just put it here on the umbrellas. I'll want to stay with the orange colors and lighter versions of it for the highlights for the city. But what's in this almost trench-like scenario, we've got the artificial light. So I want to have it appearing slightly differently here. I just put a little bit of extra light. Might be catching some light on some of the older stones. So it's a little hint of color appearance. Same, sometimes that light might just catch on the tops or bottoms of windows, uneven structures of the wall will have the light catching. Okay. Good. Right, and then I'm going to add a little bit more white to my orangey colors, orange, pink, just a little bit to see some of the light we want to keep within our picture. Perhaps on one of the sides of our towers here. See how it will smudge against the blue, so it's not going to look overly fresh, but perhaps that's exactly what we need. Just a reference of color and placing it approximately in that area, just trying to get a little bit of straightish line, but it doesn't have to be perfect. We can tweak it as we paint around it. Sometimes the opposite painting it slightly wider is a good thing. It's easier to tweak it after. And there in front of the domes. Okay. I want to go for a little bit more pink for the distant land, but more fresh pink and a little bit of violet. So then I'm ending up with some gentle purple. Okay, all these colors are looking really good and uniting together. And I think a lower part of the other side of Istanbul, the other shore, I'll block it with this pink and make it slightly stronger in pink, or slightly diluted, or slightly more into the violet. Okay. I'm looking at the lighter part of the area there. I will bring slightly darker tone for the top. It's probably because there's more, it's darker because there's more, there are more trees, not many buildings. Maybe there, I know there is a park there, a huge park apparently. Okay, and again, probably a little bit lighter. Because what happens to the shoreline, it's not on a perfect straight line. It dips in and out. There are some bays. So just painting it slightly light and darker, it gives us an opportunity to kind of to see that variation, create that variation. Okay. And my last, for now, last warm colors for the city below us. I'm going to use the same paler pink or medium pink, or could have gone for a bit of orange, doesn't matter. It's almost going to be a primer color for the lighter walls of the buildings and structures and mosques, what's below us. So I'm going just to do a few lines for the minarets, if you can see some there, and a few dabs and dots in that area as provisional plan of something lighter there. Okay, we'll put extra highlights in there, we'll put some extra darker tones. I think that's Palace Hill for the palace, where the palace stands, the main Sultan's palace, which is a museum now. That's why it's surrounded by the trees and the parkland. Okay, this is all good, and I'm going to finish my other walls here to remember that this is all wall as well. You can decide on the color, maybe slightly darker with some violet as the building starts turning the opposite way. We'll start seeing a little bit more of the shadows. But the bright orange is quite strong. I will tone it down with some highlights. It is lovely now for now. Okay, it's our key area. Okay. I've got that. That might just go a bit lower. We'll see. Right. So those are warm colors done. Let's have a look what we can do with the cool colors. And the current gray background already gives us that coolness. Right, I've got a clean brush now. I just got some fresh white. So I'll use that white for the cool colors so it doesn't get mixed up with some warmer colors. At some point, I probably will. We might need it. But if I can keep them separate for now, that would be good. So nice white. And I'd like to start with some small amount of cerulean, because it will be a not just lighter blue, but also kind of more saturated in that first light. Okay, when ultramarine looks a little bit more like a shadow beautiful color for the shadows and deeper blues. So what I'm going to do with my cerulean and white, I'll put it in areas of the domes which will be facing the light a bit more. So for example, somewhere here, and then it slowly stops. I just need more paint. I've run out very quickly. And then I'll put the larger dome. Some of that light I can see at the base kind of continues. So far, if you just apply it as a block, we can smudge and even up the strokes once we'll have our shadow later on. So what I'm going to do, so I'll put it at the front, I'll put it a little bit more on the bottom, and the more kind of the shadowy base of the dome. And also the light will start catching on the top, and just for reflecting the light from the sky, I might just put a tiny bit of light across. Okay, so when we'll start mixing it together, we've got that extra darkness. Now, looking at my cerulean against the darkness of it against the sky, I think I'm way too far out. So it needs to be darker. Okay. If you put quite a lot of paint, it might be harder to get it darker. You might need to bring quite a lot of paint there. So I think if I'll put a little extra here, that's better. Okay, and just think of it as a flat pattern first. Right, let's go and see where we can get some more of that light. So similar principle for the smaller domes. Okay, just going to spot where it might be, maybe a little bit at the top, a little bit on the left-hand side, top, left-hand side of how much we can see of it. Okay, approximately top. I quite like my filbert brush. It gives a lovely round top. Our darker blue lines, which we sketched the shapes, actually gives us again just a little concentration. We've got those little ribs, so there might be some of that structure. Okay, it just gives us a lovely almost contour shape. Okay. And that's our time to decide where, to kind of finalize the dome sizes, the domes shapes. You can still tweak them, but it gives us more of a preview. Now they're all the same, but I would like to change a little bit of the color and a little bit of tone on them later on. So far, having a little that uniform gives that ensemble of the architectural structure here, the ensemble of those domes. That lovely repetition of shapes. Right, and this ceiling structure has more light here and has a little less light on the side. And maybe a tiny bit of light at the top. Almost like a greenhouse structure, obviously not transparent or out of glass, but it has that connection of shapes. Okay. Just a plain color. And if I'm squinting my eyes, I can still see that the blue is part of the darker side of the city. And then I can start adding a little bit more of ultramarine. So I'll add to my ceruleum here some ultramarine. It's a very dark color on its own. It could be dark. So I will use a small amount of white. So we want it to be a shadow, but not a huge change in darkness. Okay, I'm just going to place it on one of the domes and see what it looks like. Is that dark enough? I think it is. And I can bring it a little bit forward, and at the same time it blends my color. Okay. I'll keep the base of my large dome slightly lighter, but next to it have a little kind of border, well, like a gentle border of contrast of light. If we want slightly more definition of depth, then we can have a little extra dab of ultramarine and maybe a little dab of it at the base. Kind of again, just to offset that lighter line and just to give that vertical shape a little more of a structure. Okay. Just going to double check if my dome is symmetrical. I think I can help with my background drop of color to bring it gently back. And then I can continue with my shadows on the smaller domes. A little bit of ultramarine. Follow perhaps some of the borders. If the dome is crossing, kind of coming into connection with other shapes. So just getting it a little bit more accurate. Sometimes it's easier just to put the ultramarine everywhere and then smudge it after. So then at least the fresh ultramarine comes in into the areas. These ones could come in as a segments of blue. Yeah, and then I could start giving the ultramarine a gentle smudge, gentle connection. And if it's need to be brought back and tidy things up, you can still do that. if you overdo the darkness, continue with the other domes and then bring the highlights or kind of the paler cerulean back later on. I'm painting my blue a little further down. I can always put a horizontal line to finish, kind of to stop the dome getting wider and wider towards the ground. I can put a little vertical after, how it just stops. But I think it's easier to make it slightly longer first. That one could go a little wider as well. Okay, they're looking good. And I'm also going to spot any other similar colors rooftops. I'll edit with just that ultramarine or ultramarine and cerulean mixed. We have a little bit of the roof color here. It's a flat color. I think maybe actually cerulean or lighter ultramarine will be better. So I placed a little mark to see it, and it's there will be some darkness, but I think the actual pale blue is slightly light and there is a shadow underneath of it. Now you will be putting it on top of your orange, so perhaps keep bringing fresh color after a small stroke and keep kind of cleaning, mixing your colors on the palette. So you'll have some freshness there as well. Yeah, it's looking good, but just missing some shadows. Right, anything else? Looks like perhaps something lighter here. We've got some lovely color for the water as well. That will be a lighter version of the blue. So I'll wipe my brush and I use some fresh white with our cerulean. To put a lighter stroke. Okay, that looks quite white. Let's put a tiny bit darker. On the palette, it doesn't look too white. On the painting, it looks very intensive white. So light blue for the water next to the opposite shore. And as I'll bring it closer to us, I might change that to more grayish blue, a bit more slightly darker blue. It's good painting over the lines we've done using terps, so quite easy to apply the brush strokes over the thin terps lines. Okay, maybe some of them. Anything else lower? Okay, maybe I can shape my towers a little bit by putting the color next to them. Right, and I'm gonna go for slightly darker blue below. Can even add a little bit of pink to that. or streaks of mixed pink. Hint of another color. Right, I painted around the minaret and it didn't look right. That's better. Although it does look quite smudgy corner. I might bring some fresh paler white, paler blue there. What I'm also going to do is my blue for the shore. Looks quite a straightish line. Going to dip it in and out by using small and large dots. So then it's almost as if buildings in some places are high and some lower. So we're seeing that variety of up and down edges. Okay, and I want it a little more light back here. Where I over smudged my white. I do like that freshness in the back. It might be my cloud reflecting. It also will show the shore a little more sharper. Okay. Right, next, I'd like us to do a little bit of play with the details at the back, finishing off our hills and adding some darker forests, or kind of not forests or parks. They look quite deep and dark, and on the photograph as almost as a deep forest. And by deciding on those shadows, I then would like us to paint the wall right in front of us. Okay, so I'm going to go for a smaller brush first, and this time I'll use my violet with some of the palette color of pink, some of the palette color of blue. I'm going to start with the top of the hill here, so don't want to go too dark. So that violet, the reason I say palette color, so if you have some pre-mixed lighter blue or pre-mixed lighter pink, it's already kind of half of the mixing done for us. So let's just place it at the back and see what it looks like. Is it going to be too dark, or by the time we merge it with the existing strokes, will it be okay? I think it will be okay. Right. If I were just to place the darker tone on the border, I might end up with a line going around my hills, my mountains. So I could start with that line, but then I'm going to vary that line, make it a little bit disappear, and then a little bit of wider somewhere else, make it vary in quantity, vary in strength. Okay, if you want to add even a little bit of cooler blue from any of your palette color. Okay, I might just put a little bit of blue. Again, it might be buildings, it might be other structures there, it might be part of that landscape. And also, that blue will represent some of the shadows, you know, like we've got the domes. That similar blue will start appear from the paler shadows within these light conditions. Okay, so it's quite suggestive, and we need a tiny bit of darkness. I think I'm gonna go for violet, fresh violet and ultramarine. So this is a solid dark color. We can't quite see what the color is. Now my bristles do have some white on them, so by the time I mix the color well, it becomes slightly lighter from a solid darkness. If the color kind of overwhelms on your brush, just don't forget to take most of the chunks of paint off your brush and then just use the tip of it to bring to your painting. Right, so I'm going to put a stroke or two and see how that darkness works. Okay, that darkness will disappear quickly. I can go even darker because I have got quite a bit of paint on the opposite shore. So if I'll dab it in the cleaner areas, that will appear darker, but still smudges and brings a little bit of light. So on the lower part, kind of by the water, there will be lovely promenades and areas where the boats stop and pick up the passengers. One of the key transports from one shore to another. We've got this the side we're on. We've got the eastern side and we've got the western side. We are in the ancient part of the Istanbul here on the hill. Okay, so the boats go like buses and the prices are very similar, not expensive to go in and out. Will be expensive if you go on a touristy boat, but as a tourist you can go just on a normal bus type of boat, commuting boat. Okay, and I'm going to add some of this darkness now between some of the domes and towers, imitating the impression of trees or shadows. Just want to have a little variety of shapes here and to have some contrasts. If the marks become too similar, step away, maybe summarize them into a shape, maybe change the brush, maybe clean the brush and apply a little bit more precise, a little bit more smudged strokes. Okay, so I'm looking for the left out light marks and some of the darks. Okay. Let's put any other stronger violet. I think I could do with a couple of even darker strokes. If you want to use tiny bit of black, maybe that will be the time as well now, just to put perhaps a stroke, which will blend. Okay, that looks too standing out. Okay, by the time the reflection will stop, I think that will be okay. Okay. And if I'll go back to my fresher violet and blue, I can also do the little towers, little tower tops, especially this one. It stands out against the lighter colors. Okay, maybe a tiny bit more darker on its base. You want to put a couple of windows or suggestions on the windows. If they're too small, don't worry about it. Okay, maybe another tower top. I'm going to bear in mind that line we had here, as long as it's approximately, okay, where's that, this, domes, and then that one. I think that's good. I can make this shape a little bit higher. Okay, and this one is blending too much. I might give it orangey highlights that stands out from the backdrop. Sure, that's is working yet. Something's happening there. Might just give them all a slightly lighter front just to match the other tower so it doesn't get lost. Brush. I'm tidying my towers. Can bring my orange color back. Okay, and to give the towers a little bit more three-dimensional look, so far I have quite a dark shadow next to them, which is looking quite good. But just tiny bit more lighter version of it. If I'll pick up some pink or orange with some violet, might just smudge the border, might give that tower less sharpness. Quite like the sharpness before. And my roof is here, suddenly too short. Okay. So maybe keeping that darker corner and then just adding a small amount of light coming. Okay, that's better. Okay, I'm happy with this one now. That one is getting there. I'll just persevere, bringing a tiny bit more light on its top. Maybe a lighter line on the bottom of the roof. Okay, this one just to offset it against the shore again. Okay, and a little bit of darkness for a window or two. A little bit darker. I think the paint gets lighter but being inserted on a lighter surface. Okay, that's good. Okay. Exciting. So little tweaks. I spent a bit of time for the towers because they're key components here. They're quite close to us, like the domes, they're quite important. Let's have tiny bit of texture on our domes. Using a similar color, ultramarine and violet. If we can make it slightly runnier, on the runnier side, it will be easier to apply the color, probably more ultramarine than violet. Okay, I've got more violet, so let's bring more ultramarine here. I'm going for the darkest color without any white additions because the color will mix with our blues. I think that's quite violet still. Let's have more blue. And maybe even a little bit of cerulean to give it that body of darkness. Okay, that's better. I'm going to test a couple of lines on the larger shapes. So, for example, where the roof lead is turned in a different flat, we've got extra darkness. Okay, maybe a bit too dark. I can always put a lighter stroke over it, but that will be that metal connection, metal structures. Definitely can see some of that here as well. Okay, so if these lines are a little more chunky and a little bit more intrusive, I can now judge by them how much more thinner I need to go, or maybe not topping up my colors for the little divisions of domes. Right, I'll still go for the shadows here. We can see them stronger. And that will offset a few things as well. Anything underneath of our larger dome, if we lost part of that sharpness. I'm going to try not to put a straight line through. It might look a bit boring, but maybe a chunk in the middle, kind of to get that contrast going. Maybe a smaller mark, maybe a mark which will stretch further out and again stops. Okay, I just went over my highlights here, so I'll bring them back with my clean brush. So I have a number of brushes on the go now, so I can easily just tidy things up. This paler blue could also come back and partially into this area. It just looks like some sort of quirky marks, quirky adjustments, quirky connections of the roof. Okay. Right, and let's try the darker lines. I think I'm going to try them here first and just see how gently they could be placed. And perhaps closer to our shapes will have tiny bit more definition. Doesn't mean that we all have to find these lines, but they might just find it a little bit more in the darkness. There, maybe a little rhythm. And perhaps some shapes will find connection to the shadows. Okay, it might have a dome there, and then that line comes out in that space. So it's almost little hints Maybe the border will be a little stronger because it connects to other shapes around it. And then might remain in a more of a shadow part of the dome. Okay. Just little hints, just little something. Don't over intrude on those spaces. If you've done something you're not too sure about, maybe smudge it back. It's also an opportunity to touch up the tops and perhaps add little tips to the domes, those little points of ornamental value. And again, partial areas, we might not see them as much, they might get lost in that environment, but giving it a go, finding them might be exciting. Sometimes you might work into a lighter color as well, not just a darker color. Okay, so that's somewhere there. Again, if I'm smudging something, reducing my shapes or making them less of the roundness, I bring the brush back and touch them back. If I made the lines too dark, very easy just going over them and lifting some of that color. Or even just going with a tiny bit of touch with a finger. So exciting. Right, I think my domes could benefit from a tiny bit of highlights. So the tips could have a little refreshment of color and also tiny bit of highlights in there on its light side. So I might just put a lovely pimple at the top. Okay, ideally the white will be on the left hand side. Kind of they're there, but they're not. If they end up like some of mine too light, I'll just put a tiny bit of a darker mark on the right hand side and continue with the outer line of the dome, so it's still reads so the lighter dab doesn't sit and doesn't get attached to the top, but it's just on its surface. Okay. Maybe enough. Just checking if anything clashes here. Right, and my little highlights. Just wanted to put some fresher white, pale blue on the tip of the spheres. Just tiny bit. If you're happy with your domes as they are, worried about putting extra highlight, maybe just leave it out. Doesn't have to be done. Maybe try one, see how it looks. It is a thinner line. Sometimes it would be frustrating adding something extra and what you worked already well and what's already works. Okay, I think that's a little too much now, so I'm going to smudge it back. These could just have just a little touch of light. I'll smudge it a little bit more so it's not appearing as a strong line. That's better. Gives that little more reflective surface. Could have also done it with a hint of our pink or orange. I think I might do that after I've done the white. I'll just pick up some paler. Quite a lot of white within my orangey color. Might just touch a little bit of color there. And connects it to the sky even better. Yeah, this one is standing in front, so that's could be in the shadow. And my larger dome will have a similar connection and light. I forgot to put any darker marks for the dome in blue. Perhaps we see them in a lower belt, stronger. And as the shapes going higher, they're a little more lost. Mine looks dark, but it doesn't show too well because it's reflecting in that surface. I think that will be fine. Maybe some of the light will come to the pointy ornament here, and it is less wobbly now because it's overall losing its perfection of shapes. Okay, that's good. Right, we haven't done anything at the bottom, but that's going to be done quite quickly and quite freely. Okay, anything else here? For the rest of the lower town, just smudging my mountain at the back gently so it's less focus. There is a focal point, but I want the focus to stay here. Right, for the lower part of the town, I'm going to use some fresher white with any of my pinks or yellows, but mainly white. I just want to put a couple of highlights. There might be still some street light, there might be some bolder reflection of light on some of those pink areas we dabbed. So that will be just coming in a little here and there. And perhaps a very small amount of it elsewhere here. That's it. Just gives a tiny, tiny bit of the buzz of light is stopping for the night. That light will be getting switched off. I can use that light on the corner here right in front of us for this boulder shape. Maybe a little bit of that light as well somewhere. So we're ready for it. And also we wanted to have a little bit of paler strokes on the buildings. And now when we've done those bold oranges, we said we might come some of them down a little. I'm gonna go again for magenta and yellow, but this time much more white. Again, maybe not as yellowish as I just used now. And I just want to place a couple of lighter strokes with an existing bolder orange. Okay, might just offset some of the shapes, might just bring, I'm doing it on the left-hand side of that main dome's base, what the larger dome sits on. Okay, and that gives me a nicer clear light. There might be change of light as we turn in the corner. I just change that boldness, varying it a little more. Okay, I think that might be enough for this area. Anything here? Again, perhaps on a corner there might be just catching just a little bit of light, and then it's stays kind of skims through. Maybe a little less here, just merged a bit more. Maybe nothing here, maybe we'll be catching up a little bit more on the side. Might be a good idea just to touch it up on our ridges here. Okay, these are quite nice. Little light shimmering on our domes. Okay, right, and I'm ready for my cooler colors. Right, couple of minutes and we're there. So I'll go with my larger, cooler brush. And I'm going to apply it and the colors very quickly. Wanted to maybe partially transparent, partially opaque. so not too chunky. I'm gonna go for ultramarine and white. There could be some violet there as well. I've got some lovely shadows there. We've got some slightly lighter tones. If your ultramarine is not dark enough, you can use a little bit of Payne's Grey, black, just to make more of an indigo. Just using the remains of my ultramarine, bit of violet, a little bit of cerulean, because by the time cerulean is mixed with violet, will give a similar color. And as I said, a little bit more softer, runny consistency. I'm going to block it here so we can see the wall straight away. And I will vary the, I just need a tiny bit more herbs to make it runny. So then this grayish blue also got some sharper darkness to it as well. That's a better one as well. Okay, that's better. Nice. Becomes a bit more runnier now. Fantastic. That's what I wanted. Okay, something in between chunks of color and its softness. Okay, can come close to the areas where we plant some light. Okay, and I'm going to merge it, just smudge it about, wiggle about those areas where I've got my windows. I might bring more solid violet, or violet, a little bit of black. Put a nice shadow here. The violet will come up right here in the bottom corner. I think that would be a nice solid darkness. And then bring it, that again, violet to any of our blues and any of our in-between colors. Just move it a little closer. Make sure that my windows are playful. Might bring the light in between the windows a little bit more playful than too abrupt. Okay. Any other darknesses of the violet in between the archway here, if you do an archway. Okay. Is that stalls or umbrellas or little market? Put some shadows in it as well. Little image of that lighter color we had in the wall. I think I need to bring some, a little bit of fresher color just to smudge it in, to have that light coming from there, but it's not our sky, not our sunset. It's something else. I think it looks too perfect. Just tone it down with a few strokes. Some of my strokes, just checking that not vertical, for especially for the gates and windows. Okay, maybe I'll get rid of the windows first and then paint them again. Plain area. Plain area, that's good. Anything extra? Dark. Oh, this is a lovely violet. And the last few bolder shadows. Just bring that strength of God. That's it. I think I'm on it now. Brings that contrast to the front. Show us that wall we're in. Yeah. A little bit more darkness somewhere here. Good. And we'll bring an extra violet, maybe somewhere here as well. That just looks so strong and exciting. And that's when my windows will come up. They're kind of, are they part of that structure or the texture? Are they windows? And if I put a tiny bit of light around them, they will start looking like catching the light. Some stonework of some sort. And even part of the wall get caught and the light. I think this stronger violet, I was actually thinking I'll use more blue here, but I think the stronger violet really connects us to the sky and being in between the blue and the oranges. Very exciting color choice. Right, and I think I'm ready to stop. I'm going to let my painting dry, and I might consider doing tiny bit of highlights on my dome and maybe tiny bit of tweaks for the lights at the back and just see if anything gonna clear there, but nothing too major. Quite like how quickly the front has developed. Maybe another light line somewhere here, just kind of again, is that part of the wall? Is that part of that shiny space around us? Right, and I'm going to stop. Thank you very much for today. Continue playing with your colors. Continue working with those opposite contrasts of blue and orange. And I look forward to seeing your paintings. Thank you.